Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Tuesday morning, April the 29th. We had some severe weather yesterday across the nation's heartland. There were a couple of tornadoes reported, at least in the preliminary report stage here across Minnesota and Wisconsin, and there were some hail reports and damaging wind reports all the way down southwest of there into the south central part of the nation. That same frontal system slides to the south and east today. We'll see storm prediction outlook for possibility of severe weather later today and tonight. It has shifted to the south and east across places like eastern Great Lakes, the western part of the Mid-Atlantic region, western part of the northeast U.S., and from there all the way south and west, again, down to the south central part of the nation, Texas in particular. First, before we get into the severe weather possibilities and a recap of yesterday, wanted to take a look here at the latest sea surface temperature anomalies. We're almost into the month of May, and we're getting closer and closer to the 2025 tropical season in the Atlantic basin, and certainly sea surface temperatures play a big role. No El Nino right now in the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean. These are the latest sea surface temperature anomalies. Here is the west coast of South America, and you can see a lot of nearly normal conditions as shown on this map in white, or even some below normal conditions out across the equatorial part of the Pacific Ocean, the equator cutting right through this area right here. Also notice, this is kind of an important factor right now, notice a lot of cooler than normal water just off the west coast of Mexico, just off the west coast of the U.S. We've talked occasionally about some colder than normal air masses that have been pushing in from the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean into the western U.S. Kind of different than a normal track for colder than normal weather across the nation comes from Canada into either the northwestern part of the nation or the central or eastern part of the nation. But the last few weeks have seen a lot of colder than normal air masses just roll right in from the Pacific Ocean into the western U.S. And this is one of those explanations for that, is that indeed the water temperatures are well below normal in some spots just off the U.S. West Coast and Mexico West Coast. And in fact, we'll see another such air mass impacting the western U.S. late this weekend, early part of next week, and it could set the stage for more severe weather during the first half of next week in the nation's midsection. Also of interest, notice out here this area we talked about a month or so ago when we issued our tropical outlook, and you can find that. Just go to the homepage of arcfieldweather.com, then go to seasonal outlooks, and you can take a look at the tropical outlook, the summertime outlook that we posted a month or so ago. And there was a pocket of colder than normal water conditions off the west coast of Africa a month ago. That has expanded and in fact has shifted farther and farther to the west, the colder than normal water. And that certainly is an inhibiting factor for tropical storm formation or intensification in the Atlantic basin. This is the kind of the main breeding ground region of the Atlantic Ocean here for the tropical activity. So any kind of cooling in that part of that ocean could be very important for the upcoming season, again, because of the cooler than normal waters here off of Africa and the neutral conditions here to below normal conditions here in the tropical Pacific. We do not see a very active tropical season, more on the normal side here. So again, go to the specific to get the specifics at arcfieldweather.com. But this is something we'll monitor closely over the next several weeks. So the rest of the Atlantic Ocean has nothing serious in terms of above normal, just slightly above normal water temperatures across the Caribbean Sea, and maybe a little bit more than that across the northern part of the Gulf. Well, here are the preliminary storm reports from yesterday. It certainly could have been worse. These are just preliminary right now, but you see the red dots right in here across southern Minnesota and Wisconsin. Those are indeed tornado reports, and we'll see if more roll in. This is, of course, only up to midnight last night, so there could have been some activity. It probably was some activity after midnight, and we'll see this added to here. But the blue markers here represent damaging wind reports, and green hail. And that severe weather outbreak occurred primarily up across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, but there was some activity extending all the way down into the south central states. Now here's the outlook by NOAA's Storm Prediction Center for later today and tonight. And again, that frontal system that played a big role yesterday, sliding to the south and east from the middle part of the nation into the eastern part of the nation and extending all the way southwest to Texas here. So there was an enhanced risk later today, early tonight across the Ohio Valley, the eastern Great Lakes, the western part of the Mid-Atlantic region, and the western part of New England, the I-95 corridor region, let's say from D.C. to Philadelphia to New York City to Boston, pretty much in the clear for severe thunderstorm activity. Certainly, it may be a close call in D.C. and areas to the north and west of I-95 can certainly get a strong thunderstorm with the arrival of this frontal system, but it loses some of its upper level support by the time it reaches the I-95 corridor region. Now, we'll monitor that closely over the next several hours, but again, an enhanced threat from western New York State across the Ohio Valley, and that also there's a threat that extends all the way down, including an enhanced area, down all the way across Texas. So this is the area of concern for later today into tonight, again with that same frontal system that produced some severe weather out across the upper part of the Midwest on Monday. Well, I've talked at length about the concept that additional cold air outbreaks this time of the year leads to additional severe weather outbreaks, and indeed that will be the case going into the early part of the month of May. I do see some more cold air outbreaks, either coming from the eastern Pacific Ocean into the western U.S. or from Canada into the central and eastern U.S. And the reason that concept exists, that cold air outbreaks this time of the year leads to severe weather outbreaks, is it leads to upward motion in the atmosphere. The upward motion in the atmosphere is what the meteorologist really tries to focus in on, because that is where clouds develop, that is where showers and thunderstorms develop. And this is just a very simplistic graphic, but it shows well why cold air intrusions lead to upward motion, which in turn can lead to those severe weather outbreaks or just general precipitation. You get the cold, dry air, and it is dense air relative to that warm and more humid air out ahead of it. So the warm and more humid air is lifted by this undercutting cold air wedge here when you have cold air advancement, in this case from left to right, or typically in the U.S. from west to east. So again, that cold air is denser and it acts to lift the warm humid air, and this is your upward motion right in this area here, and this is what I've been calling that battle zone or clash zone region, oftentimes setting up in the middle part of the nation. So this is why we track cold air outbreaks this time of the year, because it leads to enhanced upward motion, which in turn can lead to those severe thunderstorm outbreaks that we've seen quite often over the last few weeks, and unfortunately it looks like it'll stay quite active with more severe weather over the next couple of weeks. Well, now let's take a look indeed at those 850 millibar temperature anomalies. This is using the 0Z run of the GFS, and here is that one colder than normal air mass that helped to kick off a few tornadoes yesterday across Minnesota and Wisconsin. And we'll see it is sliding to the south and east, and here we go by this evening. This is that battle zone region setting up right in here, and again, that cold, dense air is undercutting the warmer, more humid air out ahead of it. Indeed, temperatures today will climb up into the 80s in much of the Mid-Atlantic region, setting the stage for some enhanced upward motion later today into tonight. And we'll monitor closely the possibility of severe thunderstorm activities, especially across western New York, the Ohio Valley, eastern Great Lakes, and really that threat will extend all the way down into Texas. And notice right here we have this frontal boundary zone here showing up at the 850 millibar level with that cold air driving to the south and east into warmer and more humid air out ahead of it. Now, let's go farther down the line here, and we'll see another cold air intrusion from Canada into the northern U.S. here by the end of the work week. That continues to slide south and east, reaches the mid-Atlantic region by the time we get to Saturday. Now, look out west here. Here we go once again with another colder than normal air mass riding in from the eastern Pacific Ocean, where water temperatures are below normal, into the western states. This is over the upcoming weekend. One batch of colder than normal air out across the the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., and this is very impressive cold here, sliding into California towards the second half of the upcoming weekend. Again, we saw quite chilly water temperatures here off the Mexican coast, Baja California, and off the U.S. West Coast. And this will slide slowly to the south and east. And here we go by Monday night into maybe Tuesday, maybe even into Wednesday, the first half of next week. Once again, we have the possibility of setting up that battle zone region out across the front range of the Rockies to the midsection, maybe from Texas all the way up to Nebraska. Something we'll keep our eyes on. But here we go again with that cold, dry, dense air undercutting what will become a warm and humid air mass, with air flowing out of the Gulf northward into the nation's midsection. Again, this is a threat for the first half of next week. Well, let's wrap up with the surface forecast maps as we begin the day here on Tuesday, April 29th. Still seeing some snow. Quite impressive all the way from the Hudson Bay region of Canada into the upper part of the Midwest. Again, representative of that cold, dry air mass from Canada, in this case driving south and east. That frontal system, that cold front, by this evening, on a line right in this area right here by later on this afternoon into the early part of the evening hours. And again, the threat for severe weather greatest across the western part of the Mid-Atlantic region, the western part of the northeast U.S., the eastern Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley. This is the area of main concern. Now, there can be a few strong thunderstorms that make their way all the way into the I-95 corridor region, especially in D.C. and areas to the north and west of there, but that upper level support kind of loses its punch by the time this system reaches the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, Boston corridor. So I don't expect severe weather in the I-95 corridor region, and don't expect it all the way along the East Coast as well. You have to go inland here, but it's something we'll monitor over the next several hours. Now, all the way down into the south central states, there also can be some severe weather later today into tonight. Same frontal system really extends all the way down into Texas, and you have that clash zone here with cold, dry air to the north and west, encountering that warm, more humid air flowing out of the Gulf right into the south central states. Now let's push forward here into the overnight hours, and again you can kind of see that frontal system right here, and precipitation tends to fall apart as that upper level support dissipates here, and it completely falls apart by the time we get to Wednesday morning. Here we have Canadian high pressure, a cool Canadian high for this time of the year, centered over the southeastern part of Canada, influencing the weather conditions in the mid-Atlantic, the northeast U.S. Then we have a couple of low pressure areas that will flow out of the southwest into the northeast here. This is the later part of the work week here, Thursday night, Friday time frame, and there'll be a frontal system that extends from this low pressure area all the way down into the south central states. You'll see in a moment here a second low pressure area will form along that frontal boundary zone as we get into the weekend. Here we go. We have a lot of activity. We'll have to watch for the possibility of some severe thunderstorm activity, but this is the Friday night forecast map, and again, kind of an active front here, extends from one low pressure area to another one that forms down here late week, early part of the upcoming weekend. We'll move a little bit farther out in time, and here comes that next low pressure area riding right up along that frontal boundary zone by the time we get to midday on Saturday. This too can produce some shower activity in the mid-Atlantic, in the northeast U.S. So it's unsettled conditions, not only maybe late Thursday night, Friday, but into Saturday as well across the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. And then we talked about that next influx of colder than normal air pushing into the western part of the nation. We even see some snow in some of those higher elevation locations of the Rocky Mountains as of Sunday, going into the day on Monday. And again, we have this rather typical pattern that we've seen here over the last several weeks of an influx of warm and humid air out of the Gulf all the way up across the nation's midsection. At the same time, colder air is sliding to the east here from the eastern Pacific Ocean into the southwestern states. This could set up a battle zone region right here sometime during the first half of next week. We'll go out a little bit farther in time. This is Monday morning. Then we get into Monday night, Tuesday time frame, and here we go. This is, again, the area of concern here. It's still several days away, but again, colder air moving this way, warm and humid air out ahead of it, and we could set up another severe weather outbreak during the first half of next week, somewhere from the, let's say, the front range of the Rockies into the nation's midsection, something we'll focus in on over the next several days. So a continuation of some cold air outbreaks into the nation, either from Canada into places like the central or eastern states, or coming in off the cold Pacific Ocean here, the cold eastern Pacific Ocean into the western U.S. And that kind of a pattern certainly can set off some severe weather out across the nation's midsection. Again, we'll focus in on that possible threat early to middle part of next week. For later today and tonight, the interior sections of the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S., all the way down into the south central states of Texas, for example, can experience some strong to severe thunderstorm activity. That's it for now. For ArcfieldWeather.com, this has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.